Hello there. For many of you, this is the first psychology class you have ever taken, so we'll begin the semester by discussing the questions of what is psychology and why does psychology need to be rooted in science? Let's start off with an activity. Please write down 5 adjectives that describe the typical psychologist. Pause the video and take a minute to commit your ideas in writing. Now, write 5 adjectives that describe a typical scientist. Again, humor me and pause the video. Now, take a moment to compare your lists. Were there any overlapping adjectives? Any differences? I asked you to do this because sometimes people begin their first psychology class with some misconceptions about who is a psychologist. Sometimes they forget that not all psychologists are clinical psychologists or therapists, and they often are unaware of the rigorous training and research and science required to finish the PhD in any of the subdisciplines within psychology. The definition of psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. To that end, psychologists don't simply offer their opinions on topics such as depression, motivation, or personality based on their personal experiences. Psychologists don't just casually observe and describe behavior. Rather, observations are carefully controlled and theories are rigorously analyzed. Theories are developed and tested, and if the data supports the hypothesized predictions, the theory is supported. If not, the theory is rejected or revised. If I want to know whether a student's year in school predicts their anxiety levels, I don't just form an opinion based on students I've encountered. I gather a representative sample of students and carefully measure both their year in school and their anxiety, and then run a correlation and examine the results. It's worth a moment of your time to explore the idea regarding the issue of why the field of psychology needs to be a scientific discipline a bit further. Why can't we just speculate on the causes and correlates of human behavior? After all, aren't a lot of the research findings simply common sense? Consider for a minute how common sense, deductive reasoning, or our own experiences can often lead us to very different conclusions. For example, which of the following statements would you guess is more likely to be supported by the research? Birds of a feather flock together, or opposites attract? You could likely search your memory to find some examples of each, but which is more likely overall? The correct answer is birds of a feather. Based on research on the topic of attraction, we know that similarity is a predictor of attraction. Friends and couples are significantly more similar to one another on various dimensions, such as age, race, religion, attitudes, and interests, than are people randomly paired together. So what about this one? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, or out of sight, out of mind? The correct answer is out of sight, out of mind. Research shows that geographical nearness or proximity is a powerful predictor of attraction. What can account for this misconception that psychological research is just common sense? One possibility may lie in the concept of hindsight bias, or the "I knew it all along" phenomenon. For example, consider the following results from psychological research. Psychological research has found that most abused children become abusive adults. Now, use your deductive reasoning to explain these results. Why do most abused children become abusive as adults? Is it because they saw this modeled in their home? Can we use the theory of observational learning to explain the results? So, if our reasoning skills would have led us to this conclusion anyways, why did we need to conduct the research in the first place? Well, the truth is that psychological research has not found that most abused children become abusive adults. The truth is that this is a common misconception that is not supported by the data. Research published in the reputable peer-reviewed journal Science found that adults who were physically abused as children were no more likely to abuse their own children than those who were not physically abused as children. This example shows the fallibility of human intuition and common sense. Our reasoning can lead us to completely opposite findings. When we hear the outcome of a study, the concept of the hindsight bias helps us understand why we believe we could have guessed the results all along. However, when you actually ask people to predict the results of research ahead of time, they can be wrong as often as they are right. In our daily lives, it can be good advice to listen to our intuition. But when it comes to valid information about human behavior and mental processes, it's necessary to gather data with the scientific method. Science is a process. It's not a thing, it's a process, and it's the process most likely to lead us closer to the truth.